we are going to create a classic table, which is here, and that is why that's this first type here, this table here. So that's why we have our latest environment open. So here in this table, we have what? The name, age, position. So it's a list of employees. So we have 3 employees. We have their ages as well as the positions they hold. That's what we are going to do here. So in this table, we have what? Our caption or title. We also have headers, and we have the contents themselves. Okay, so this is a column, this is a column, this is a column, and then each of these is a row. All right, so let's continue. So we have our document. Let's initialize it. So I'll just say /document class 10 pt. That's my font size. I'll use a document type article. Then I'll say /begin document and then /end. So in this environment, in this block is where I'm going to create my table. Now let's proceed. So to create a table, you need a table environment. So I'll say /begin, and then I'll say table, and then we have /end table. So this is the table environment, and this is where we are going to create our table here. All right, so you create your table, you indicate your formatting, all that stuff in this block. So that's what we are going to do. We are going to start with what? The caption. So we are starting with the caption because we want the caption to be above the table. If you want the caption to be below, you can put it just after you have created a table. Now I want it above, and that is why we are putting it first. So I'll say /caption, and it's what? List of employees. So that means if you are going to create a table, you need to have your caption available. Now after the caption, now we come to the table itself. So the table itself, we have our tabular environment. We also have tabular X. Here we are using the tabular environment. All right, it's simple and easy to use. So you will say /begin, say tabular. But before I even do that, let me clear this. Let's actually run this first to make sure it's working. We will come to this. So let's run this. Let's go to build and view. So mine is going to be on the right side. So here we see what? Table 1, list of employees. All right, that's what we have as our caption. I think it's what we have here as well. All right, so it's here. Okay, only the caption counts because we are yet to create the table itself. So take note of that. I can also zoom in here for us to see. All right, now let's create the table. Now if I go to create a table, before I even start, you need to know the design of your table. Here, this is our design. So we see that we have what? 4 rows. All right, but for the rows, one of the rows is going to be used as column headers. All right, so that's what we have here. So these are headers, but in the LaTeX object, the LaTeX environment, these are all rows. All right, which we need to add. All right, so you need to have that as well, and then you also need to have, so we have your rows, you have your columns. So here we have 3 columns, and then we have 4 rows for this table. Even though this is going to be our header columns, it's still going to be considered as rows, okay, in the LaTeX environment. So let's continue. Now to create a table, we need our tabular environment, which is different from this table environment. This is the main environment. Now we need tabular, so we say /tabular. All right, that's what we need, but it's supposed to be begin. I'm only giving this text here, but the actual one is here. We have to say /begin, and we say tabular. Here's what we need here. Now once you have this, it's important to also define the columns. That should come next. All right. If you look at our table here, we have 3 columns. And so for the columns, they should also be in curly brackets. And then you define them. And so here we have this. And you should also take note that in this table that we have border lines left and right. We also have lines up and then below, and then we have the lines in the table itself, the inside, the inner lines. All right. Now on the left and on the right, this is something you need to add when you are defining your tables if you want it that way. And so in the columns, we first bring a vertical line, then we indicate the column, which is the first one, C, another vertical line, C, another vertical line, C, another vertical line. All right, this is what we need to have. Okay, so that indicates our columns, and that also lets LaTeX know that we want lines. We want lines to be drawn to separate these columns. Okay, and also at the beginning and then end of the tables, because we have these columns here. So on the far left, that's the first column. On its left, where we have the border, we need to have a line here, and then inside also we need to have our lines. That's what these vertical lines mean. All right, so that should get us started. There are other things you can add here, which I'll talk about in detail in another video. For now, this is what you need as a beginner to get started with creating tables in LaTeX. All right, so let's continue. So when you go to the next line, we add /h line. So why do we add H line? We are adding H line because we want each of the rows to what? Be separated by a line. The H line means horizontal line. And we also want lines above the first row, which we have here, which we are going to add, by the way. So here it's similar to you drawing the line. All right. So the H line is something like this. Let me just do something here for us to see. The H line is something like this. You come in to create your table and first adding your horizontal line like this. Okay, that's what this H line simply means. So that means we are first adding a line here. That's what we are doing here. Okay, so that becomes our H line. Okay, so this is basically it. I'll just enlarge this. Yeah, we will come back to this later. So I'm just trying to give us a visualization of what we are going to do here. So this is the H line that we have indicated. All right, now let's proceed. I'll just switch back to the default. All right, now let's get back to LaTeX. So this is the H line that we have. Now after you have added your H line, your horizontal line, then you indicate your rows. Okay, so here the first row we have is what? Name, age, position. That's what we have. And so that comes next. So we say name, age, position. It's also important to separate these columns. All right, we want to tell LaTeX this is column 1, this is column 2, this is column 3. And so therefore we use a separator called the end symbol. So name, age, and position. So this tells LaTeX that, okay, this is separated. So that means on the left is one column, on the right is another column. And then from here, this is a separator, so this is also another column. That is what it simply means. When you are done with that particular record, okay, this is a row, by the way, but then for each of the rows, we should have 3 columns. So that's why we have the end, this separators here. Now, when you are done with each row, you need to bring double slash. All right, and you move to the next line. That's what you need to have here. All right, so when you move to the next line too, you have to just add your H line /H line. That's horizontal line, because we want to separate each row also with a line. So if we were to do it visually here, like I was doing here, as we have, let's say this is a row or a record. I'll just do something here. Let's say if this is a record. All right, I'll try to do something here for us to see. If this is supposed to be a record, which we have here, something like this, let's see. Yeah, something like this should be good for the start. Once we are done with this, we have to bring another line. Okay, another line. All right, that is what the H line simply means. So that line is what we are bringing here to separate the next record that we have. I'll just bring this here. That line that we have, okay, is what we have here as the H line here before we add the next record, which is Michael 32 manager. Okay, that's the next record, or let's say the next row. All right, and so here we now come and we see what Michael. So we add our separator and 32 and manager, because this is the end of the row and we are going to start another row. We indicate with what? Our double slash. We move to the next line, we add /H line. The next line is what? We have Karen 27 secretary. So Karen 27 secretary. We will bring our double slash because we are done with that record. Then we move to the next one. We say /H line. And the next one is what? We have John 30 analyst. So we have John and 30 and analysts. You indicate our slash again. In the next line we say /H line. All right, and we are done. That is all for that record. All right, so we have our 3 records and we also have our headers. All right, that's what we have here. Now when you are done, we started with /begin tabular, so we have to end with /end tabular. All right, that's what you need to end. All right, so that we can get it complete. So this becomes our complete table. That's what we need to have here. So let's run this and then let's see what comes up. Good. Now we see on the right side the table has been created. That's what we see here. All right, so this table that we have seen here. Now if you take a look at the table that we have here, we see that the caption here is centered and the table that we have is aligned to the left. And so ideally they should all be in the same location. And so what we are going to do is to center the table here as well. Now if we want to center the table, we need the center environment as well. And so what we need to do is to do this. Now after the caption, you can also put it before. All right, now after the caption, or I'll just put it here just to be safe. So we'll just put it here. So we will bring a centering block so that everything in that block becomes centered. So just after this one, just after the main table environment, what we are going to be doing is to say /begin center, and then caption tabular. They are all supposed to be within that block. So that means the next /end center should be coming after the tabular. So we say /end center. This is what we should have. And so let's run this. If you run this, let's see what happens. Good. So now we see that the table and then the caption both have been centered. That is what we want to see here. Okay. Now let's see what happens. If you take a look at this here, the caption here and then the table, you can also increase the space between them. And so if you want to add an extra space between the caption and the table itself, just after the caption, you say /vinline. But now we are doing just one. So I'll run this, and when you run, you should see on the right side here that there's now an extra space in between them. You should take note of that. Now I will just remove it. This is just to show you. Okay. Another thing you should also note, you should take note of is this one here. Now with the tables, let's just say there was a text somewhere here. I'll just give a random text here. I'll say, hi there. This is a LaTeX tutorial. I'll just use the on how to create tables. Let's do this. Let's run this. Now if I added the text before the table and I run it, we are going to see something like this. All right. So when you create a table, okay, with these parameters, by default, the tables are placed on top. All right, so by default, I repeat, the tables are placed on top of the page. And so irrespective of how much text you have before the table was created, the table will automatically be sent to the top. Now this behavior can be changed because you may want to have your tables appear in a certain order, all right, or at a certain location. And so there are options that you can use. You can place it at the top, you can place it at the bottom, you can also place it at a specific location of your choice. Now let's just say that we want this table to appear as we have created the document. So that means we want to have the text first, this one here, and then the table comes next. And then if, let's say, there was to be another text, let's just say, hi there. This is the end of the document. Okay. This is the end of the document. So if, let's say, you wanted the latest documents here that you have here, you want the table to appear in the same order as the content. So that means this text first, and then the table, and then this one. Then ideally what you want to do is to tell LaTeX to place the document in the exact location. Okay, the exact location that you have specified, i.e. in that order that you have specified in the document here. And so you have to use the H option to place a document. And so with that one, you do it when you start the table environment itself, the main table here, environment. All right. And so here, what you want to do is to add this. We say square bracket, and then you say H. Okay. And some may also want to add the exclamation mark. So the H simply here, the H here means that you want the table to be placed exactly where you created it. That is here. So that means it's going to appear in that same order as you have in the document. So here, H for here. Now the exclamation mark here tells LaTeX that we want any default parameters or internal LaTeX parameters to be overridden by what you have specified here. So this is going to take preference over other parameters. So now let's run this. Good. So now when you run it, you see that it has what? Changed. It's appearing as it's supposed to be in that same order that you specified. Now if you want it to be at the bottom, you can add B. And then to go at the bottom of the page. So sometimes you may want to force certain designs or certain placements. You can use some of these things to ensure. All right, now I'll go back to H and then I'll put it here. All right, so this is what we are going to have if you create LaTeX and you specify the position. So this is how it's done. Now let's look at something else. All right. Now with LaTeX, you can also use it to reference or refer to some objects or items. Now let's just say you want to make reference of this table in the text, in another paragraph. It's possible to do that. All right. So in that case, you have to add a label to your table. All right. So for example, I'll just add this here. So let's say we want to reference this table in another line, which we'll look at. You add your label. Okay, so here what we do that after the caption you can say /label. Then you give the label that you want. You can say my table. And so that means if you want to refer to this table in another location, another paragraph or somewhere else, let's just say this is my first table, or let's say this is table. All right, table 1 or something, any text. So if you want to refer to that table here, you just say /ref, then you indicate the label that you use. Here we said my table. All right, this is it. You can bring your dot, whatever, but that one depends on you. So now if I run this, you see what is happening here. It says this is table 1. Okay, that is what has been indicated here because we gave a label here. You should also take note that by default, LaTeX numbers the tables for you automatically. All right, so I mean there are ways you can use to change the behavior, which we'll talk about later in other videos. All right, when we have multiple tables. But for now, let's proceed with what we have here. So this is what you need. Okay, so this can be used to also reference the table here. All right, so this is how to create the classical table in LaTeX. All right, so we can now try using your own data sets and then try to experiment and then create some tables and have some fun. All right, so let's proceed.